Good evening, everyone. It is October 8th, 2024, and the time is 6:08 p.m. I now call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is conducted via remote participation. We will make recordings available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Emily Hutchings. I am the co-chair for tonight's meeting. We will start with a roll call of the commission members present. Frank Valdez.
Present.
Andrew Arba is not present. Deborah Fennick.
Present.
Tim Talon.
Present.
All right, we have a quorum. And with that, moving on to general business under minutes. Our first order of business is the approval of the September 10, 2024 meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments or has anyone noted sections that need corrections?
No comments.
All right. Is there a motion to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No comment.
Right. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for September 10th, 2024 UDC meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, a roll call vote. Frank Valdez?
Yes.
Deborah Fennick?
Yes.
Tim Talon?
Yes.
All right, minutes have been approved. The next is a recommendation for review. We need to review the recommendation for the general building at Assembly Block 9. Has everyone reviewed the document, and does anyone have any comments or sections that need correcting? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the design recommendation for Assembly Block 9? Did I miss some? Anyone? Tim, did you say so moved and I missed it?
I'm not sure if we typically approve these or not.
Oh.
I mean, I'm fine making a motion to approve, but I think typically we provide feedback but aren't approving or disproving the recommendation.
Okay. Well, on the notes that I've been provided, it asks for a motion. So just to cover our bases, I'm going to ask for a motion. I'm sorry.
So moved.
All right,
Motion
second?
to approve.
Second.
All right, seconded by Deborah. All in favor, roll call. Frank Valdez?
Aye.
Deborah Fennick?
Yes.
And Tim Talon?
Yes.
All right, on to our design reviews. Today, we have a design review for 181 Pearl Street, continued from the September 10th meeting. Is the applicant here to present? I see Pablo Picker here, and looks like
Madison speaking. I'm promoting the team now.
awesome.
Sorry for any delays.
All right, I see Pablo Picker and Paul Miller. Thank you for coming.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. See you guys.
All right, to remind the commission, the commission previously voted on option 1 for the massing and facade, and so now there will be a presentation, and the vote tonight will be to vote on design guidelines and any additional design guidance. So Mr. Miller, Mr. Picker, you have 20 minutes to present.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. It says sharing is not turned on.
One moment, we'll see if we can fix that.
You should be able to now. Sorry about that.
No problem. There it goes. Okay. All right, so as Emily said, design option 1 was the approved direction last time, and we're here to present our progress and show how we've responded to the feedback, the helpful feedback that we got last time. So I'm going to run through the list of the feedback that we understood from the last meeting, and then we'll go kind of point by point through each one of these items. The first one, and I think the main concern was really about the landscape and the streetscape. How could it be improved in general? How could more planting be added? And how could it be better integrated with the architecture? The second point was about the facade and just that it needed kind of the next level of resolution. There was a comment about being thoughtful about the details of the metal panel. And how could we detail it to create an elegant facade? And there was also a comment about being careful about glare. The third comment that we heard was that the west-facing facade, or the kind of entry facade of the project, needed more variation, kind of just another level of work. Fourth point was sort of asking about the experience of entering the site from the street. One of the commissioners asked how could it be more like an outdoor room, and mentioned that the stoop culture was a great aspect of the neighborhood. The fifth point was about color, that the green color and the recessed balconies that we showed in the last presentation was important to the composition. A comment was made saying that, of course, the green and the plants wouldn't be around all year, and could more color be added to the composition. And then the last point, kind of the simplest one, is that the roof is required to support future photovoltaic panels. Okay, so point number 1 about the landscape and the streetscape design. We've sort of completely rethought the streetscape design since the last meeting, and created a planter along both the Pearl Street and the Dana Street facades. So we're getting a lot more plants on the street, and working to integrate it into the overall design, as you'll see in the upcoming slides. Those planters are filled with pollinators, native plant species that are aligned with the Somerville Pollinator Action Plan. And the planters are clad in a red brick that is kind of similar to some of the planters that you see around the neighborhood and sort of Somerville in general. There's an image at the top here that shows one of those neighboring planters. And just a little detail here, but since that planter brick isn't structural, we were able to run it vertically in the soldier course, which puts it in better kind of dialogue with the facade and allows it to turn the corner on a radius. So we feel that these planters buffer the building from the sidewalk, creating a soft edge that's consistent with the way that the neighboring houses and buildings in the neighborhood meet the sidewalk. The second point here is about the facade detailing. And so we spent a considerable amount of time on the details at the corners, as those metal panels turn the corners, at the break lines between levels, at the heads, jambs, and sills of windows, at the parapet, and gave them a kind of thoughtful next resolution here. The corners are turned using standard pieces, but not the kind of typical clunky detail, to create a little reentrant corner, which we think is really elegant and more interesting and true to the material than covering the corner with an L-shaped standard trim piece. We also changed the finish from anodized aluminum, which we presented last time, to a mica-based coating, which gives the same kind of dynamic color change and shadow play that we like about anodized, but it's less glare prone, and it's designed specifically for that purpose. And yeah, it's a product from Morin, which is a company that makes metal panel facades. And then finally here, the direction of the panel is flipped from floor to floor. So the angle of that triangular profile is different between the floors, which creates this dynamic shadow play on the facade. And also it's going to pick up different colors in the sky and in the neighboring buildings. So we're pretty excited about that level of development. The next point is about the entry facade. We went back and reworked this facade to add more variation. I think it was Tim who mentioned the Central Square Theater, which was a great precedent for us. And we really liked that warm kind of copper colored corrugated metal and thought it would be a really nice sort of addition to this composition and feel at home within where we were going, but also just add more interest and more warmth to the entry facade. And so we took the area of the facade that is in front of where the common stair is and made that into this kind of copper colored corrugated panel. And the other thing I wanted to point out here is that we changed the breeze block wall that was previously along the property line to that same red brick as the planters, which gives it, it just kind of marks the building, the property a bit more clearly, and helps to create that outdoor room that I mentioned at the beginning we're going to see more of now. And then that brick wall can change height. It does change height based on the program, the adjacent program and desired level of privacy. So here's the point about the outdoor room. And the stoop culture in the neighborhood. We really like that idea. And so we want to pull that stoop culture from the neighborhood across the site. And so we've added a bench, a kind of generous sized bench here on Pearl Street at the entrance to the property. And it's sort of situated beneath the new oak tree that we're adding on Pearl and marks the entrance into the courtyard. The planter that you're seeing behind the bench is filled with a mix of the native species that line Pearl Street and Dana Street. And we kind of feel that this building, like the other project we've presented to you all recently, has a couple different jobs to do. It has to address McGrath Highway, right, which is a 7-lane road. It's busy, it's loud, etc. This is across the street from a gas station. We know it's not going to stay that way forever, but it's part of the context now. And this building is also part of this residential neighborhood. And so what we really like about this update to the design is that we think that the building we presented last time was good at addressing McGrath Highway, and now we have this outdoor room and this facade, which is good at addressing the more quiet kind of residential part of the neighborhood. Okay, so color. I think it was Deborah who mentioned the color of the balconies being important, and so we've taken that and sort of turned it up a little bit here by adding some more color to where people touch the building. So the railings are kind of cyan or like green color, and the window sashes are an orange red that complement the brick planters. And then last point, the roof. We verified that the specialized energy code does require the roof to be solar ready, so we've just updated the design to accommodate that requirement. I'm going to flip through some before and after images. So on the left side is the design that you guys saw last time, and on the right side is the current proposed design. So you can see here that the new planter, the brick wall around the perimeter of the site changing height. And so we like that those kind of became a composition that ring the building. And then here's the view from Pearl Street before on the left and the current design on the right. And we included an image with the oak tree turned off just so we could see the facade composition a little bit better. And then a kind of close-up view of that outdoor room entrance into the entry courtyard. And then just kind of looking along Pearl Street as you're walking down, approaching the entrance. This is a view from Dana Street. And then just an enlarged elevation detail that shows some of those conditions that we were working on, the corner, the kind of break detail between floors, which I didn't mention before, but all the windows are aligned with that. So it becomes both a organizational element and a composition, and also a kind of functional element, creating a break or separation between the different panels. Okay, and I'm going to hand it over to Amy from Ground Inc., who's the landscape architect here, to talk about some of the plantings and landscape details.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Paul mentioned, we kind of reconfigured the larger zones of planting, and this was so we could maximize the amount of planting within the property line and try to bump up our green score in that way. I think that we have a really nice variety. It's a small but tight palette of pollinator-friendly plants that are in line with the Pollinator Action Plan. And we tried to use species that would provide year-round interest. So nice fall foliage, nice spring flowering, of course, and then even some winter interest with the switchgrass, leaving those long and not mowing them back, not trimming them back in the winter, but kind of leaving them in their nice natural state, and the cornice that has a nice red twig component that, you know, obviously lasts throughout the winter. So a couple of the things that we considered were sort of the modularity and height difference that would complement the facade of the architecture. And then as well, trying to create a lot of movement and texture and color and just kind of frame out the streetscape experience that kind of enhances that the porch culture feel there. So as you can see along the right-hand corner of Pearl Street up to Dana, it's a little bit more of a parallel and perpendicular patterning, a little bit more orthogonal, if you will. And then towards the entrance, we combine the different plantings and sort of a little bit more of an informal or meadow-esque kind of feel. And again, they're all kind of maxed out at trying to hit a minimum of 2 feet in height, and then 2 foot minimum soil depth in the planters so that we can meet the green score. And that is something that we have met and exceeded the target and the recommended green score calculations. So I'm happy to answer any more specifics, questions that you all might have on the plants themselves. But that's just the overall big picture summary. So this is
Amy,
a little bit.
Just on the planter, what is the width of the planter?
The planter is 3 feet about, and I think at the entryway it's a little bit wider. So.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yep, 4 to 6, 4 feet probably. And then of course we kept the oak at the front as kind of a signature piece, if you will, to frame out the space.
I'm going to quickly pull up the dimensioned site plan just so we can get a precise answer on that dimension. Just 1 second. Okay, here it comes. So 3 feet is correct for the planter that wraps Pearl and Dana Street. And then about 3'8" for the planter in the entry courtyard.
Oh, and the other thing that I forgot to mention was the extent of the permeable paving that we have. So we have the pavers and the appropriate subsurface profile that we typically use, that you can see them rendered sort of at the throughout the entryway and then along the corner, wrapping the building over towards Dana Street at the back.
So the last
these-
slide here is just the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Amy.
No, this is just a little overview of our green score card and the tally that we came up with, and then some of the technical details that we would be applying to the planters and the paving and the plants themselves.
And that's, those are the updates we had to present tonight. We're happy to take any questions or comments.
I have a question about the color of the mica, what would you call it?
Mhm.
Mica enhanced gray. Is it one color and what we're seeing is the angle of the fold.
Yes.
The surface. Yeah, so it's all done in
Correct.
even. Okay.
It's called Silversmith, and based on, this is a sample of it, based on, right, we're just getting my inside light right now, but based on the angle, you're going to get a slightly different, cooler or warmer coloration, depending on what it's picking up. So that's what you're seeing here in the rendering.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then even on the back of the building, it's quite dark. It looks quite dark, but I imagine again that is
Yep.
it's the same color. It is just the way it's reflecting light. Yeah.
Yeah, so this particular lighting here and the angle of the panel, you're just getting all shadow, right? But as you walk past this thing, it's constantly changing, which is one of the things that we think is really great about it for this corner. It's not, we're usually when you're moving, when you're near a building, you're moving around it. And so it's kind of constantly just subtly changing.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, it gives it a coherence as a single architecture, but it brings it, it modifies the scale of it.
Mhm.
I think is pretty effective technique. Yeah, and one other, this is a detail question. Is the bench a wood bench on top of?
So we've been using this material,
Yeah.
and the name, I think I talked about it last time. I'm always forgetting the name. It's upcycled rice hulls, and and it has the warmth and feeling of wood, but it's really stable.
Mhm.
And that's probably what we would use here. It grays out like an ipe.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked it up after you presented it because I was curious about it.
It's really cool. We've used it in a few projects. It's admittedly pretty new. It's a pretty new technology, so time will give us the full picture, but it seems very promising.
Yeah, I think these updates are really successful. So I don't have a lot of comments I looked through it earlier and I think it addressed a lot of what we were talking about. I particularly like the I don't know if it's like what do you call it? A weathered steel, or whether I imagine it's an aluminum that has that kind of coloration, but I think that really helps locate the entry.
Mhm.
And get this and start and do what you were talking about creating a place here. So I think that's fairly successful. Yeah. So I think these are very successful updates.
Thank you.
I would agree with that. I think that the entrance has definitely improved tremendously. And I think that is definitely much better resolution to what you had. So I would agree with everything that Deborah said. You responded well to a lot of the comments, and I think it's incredibly improved.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall, this is a really thoughtful response to the conversation we had the last time. So really appreciate that. I had one question. The canopy that we're looking at here, is that extending
Mhm.
over the planter box?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And the
And I,
materiality of the canopy, is that, well,
we're, yeah, so this is um, version number 2, probably. And one thing I'm trying to figure out, being relatively new to the Somerville Urban Design Commission process, is how much we can keep changing these things after we leave you guys, because I think this one is probably headed in the right direction, but also not done. We tend to continue designing through design development. So just that quick preface, but what we're showing here is a wood-like material on the underside, again, to give kind of this outdoor room some warmth. And then these edge profiles are aluminum to match the cladding, the metal panel cladding. And there's a kind of darker material. It's in the rendering showing the same copper colored metal as this vertical corrugated metal. So in that's this version of it. But I would love to keep kind of working on it, with this being the direction, right? That there's an idea about having a generous canopy, it being of the same material language as the rest of the composition.
So it
Yeah,
sounds, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
so I'd be comfortable with that, and oftentimes in situations like that, we'll just identify it as part of the design guidance that, you know, the canopy design will continue to develop, or whatever the specific item is. It feels to me like it's kind of between two things. It feels like it's its own distinct element, but on the other hand, it is extending all the way over to that vertical copper piece.
Yeah.
So I think it could go one of two ways. Either, as you described, it really becomes part of that copper piece that marks the entry and comes down and kind of slides underneath it, and that materiality is really located all around the entrance, on the canopy at the entrance, and then the vertical piece. Or it gets shorter and smaller and something that's more distinct right over the entry. Maybe
Yep.
in that case, it doesn't touch the copper piece.
Yep.
I would definitely suggest for it to have some type of lighting incorporated in it. I think that the idea of like lighting that entry component, I think would be advantageous to emphasize the entrance as well. So I agree with what Tim said. You know, I think that you're in line with something that you can continue investigating. I think that how dramatically can a canopy change, right? But I think introducing light, on the wall in the canopy, I think it would help you tremendously. Obviously, how you drape something like that is going to add a different element, right? Scuppers, or it's internal, or I would say that the way that you're showing it currently doesn't show that. I mean, I don't know where the water's going, but just consider those things so that
Right into the planter.
that's a good point.
Well, yeah, that's I love that idea.
That's a good
Yes.
point too.
I wonder if you might want to consider uplighting it. I mean, it's a warm, beautiful material, wall-mounted fixture that casts light up on it. Get a kind of a beautiful building at the entry.
It's your entrance, right? So you want to be pulled in, and and maybe even incorporating some lights in the wall as you go in. Kind of like like bringing you in. It's like, I mean, you're bringing people into the residence. I think it's kind of like nice creating an event, but it's nice. I think it's really successful.
Yeah, we had early on, we played around with introducing the address 181 as kind of bigger numbers on that copper vertical section, and then it felt almost too busy. But what you just said, Frank, in terms of the entrance. I feel like coming along that brick wall with a more subdued number leading you and then lighting up that entryway all the way to the front entrance will definitely bring that all together. So I think light is going to be a big design element in this entry.
Do you think that copper material could slide under the canopy over to the entry? Or do you
Yeah,
think it would want
maybe.
to?
We actually have a big window there now because the lobby is not very big. Where's the best place to see it? It might be able to.
All right, so I'm hearing from the commission additional design guidance recommending the continued evaluation of how light and can be integrated into the entrance and the canopy, and continued evaluation of the materials of the awning or canopy. Does that sound correct?
Sure, but I think that these can be conditions, and I think there's no need for the project to come back.
Well, I think that's you're absolutely right, Frank. I think that if there's there's specific items that are recommended design guidance, that will be something that the UDC would vote on, as well as voting on whether the project meets the design guidelines.
Correct. Okay.
Is there any additional design guidance that the commission would like to provide at this time?
So one of the things I brought up at the last meeting was a concern about the scale of the rib. Call it the rib. The 4-inch, and then I think it was a 1-inch, 1-inch depth. Is that something, I'm not sure, within the kind of the realm of standard products that Warren makes, if there are alternatives to that, like smaller scales, but is that something you'd looked at? Considered?
We did look at some of the other standard products, and we did. There were, I don't know that there were any with this pattern, this triangular profile, that were smaller. And I understand the concern, but I like this product. I think it's right for the site. We have, I don't know if I showed it last time. We have a sample here and have, looked at it outside next to our building just to kind of understand it better. And I think that it doesn't, the size doesn't worry me. I think it's good. I think that there's enough texture on it at this size.
Okay. So I guess given the kind of unique character of this project, I guess I'd recommend that the commission recommend review and approval of the materials, kind of our standard exterior mock-up condition. And I think, I'm familiar with the Silversmith color, not Moran's Silversmith, but some other metal panel manufacturers. And I agree, you get variation at different angles, in different sunlights. It is kind of more towards the cool end of the silver spectrum. I wonder whether it's worth, thinking about something more towards the champagne metallic side. But I'd leave that up to you, and would suggest a review of materials kind of prior to building permit.
All right, so for additional design guidance, I'm hearing recommendation regarding the canopy and the lighting, and then the additional recommendation that the planning board adopt a condition requiring the review of materials prior to building permit approval or submission of application, I should say.
Yes.
I really like what we did at the base of the building, changing the landscape. I thought, you didn't talk about this last time, but I know you initially presented, 2 meetings ago, a very
Mhm.
different project with townhomes.
Mhm.
And I thought that was actually very successful at the base where you had a kind of a similar planter configuration. So I'm glad to see that come back, and the idea of the integrated bench, and kind of having this more lush planted area grounding the building is really nice.
Thank you.
One other comment just on the roof.
Mhm.
I guess, so you mentioned that the stretch energy code requires a solar ready roof. There's also a requirement in addition to that, in Somerville's zoning ordinance for a vegetative roof, over 80% of the roof area. For all, though it exempts area that is for a solar panel system. So it's not a solar ready roof, but it would be, if you elect to go that route, it would be solar panels on day one.
Right.
Um,
So
Sorry,
we,
I'm going to jump in here. I apologize. I just want to note that this is not necessarily like a design element because of the building code aspects. So this might be something that needs to be evaluated at zoning review rather than here.
I'm going to also just add for the record that it's an unoccupiable roof because this is a single stair building. We cannot bring people up to the roof level. And there is a provision in the zoning ordinance that says unoccupiable architectural features are exempt from the green roof.
All right. Is it
Well,
so?
I
I'm
guess
here.
that'll need, I mean, typically this commission will review a roof plan to confirm compliance with that. So,
We included the roof plan here with the drawing set that we submitted.
okay. Okay. Again, I just raised the issue, maybe this is an issue for staff to look to closer of compliance with section 10.3.8 of the zoning code.
Thank you. Yes, that
I
that
don't- I
will
don't-
be reviewed by ISD during the zoning compliance review prior to the planning board review. All right. I'm hope I'm not pushing anyone. Do I have a motion on those two items for additional design guidance?
Motion.
Right, moved by
So,
Frank
sorry,
Valdez. So
which 2 items do we?
it was a motion to, or the first item of design guidance was to review the lighting and materials at the entry canopy. And the second one was to recommend the planning board include a condition of approval requiring material review by the UDC prior to the application for a building permit.
I second it.
Right, seconded by Deborah. Roll call vote, Frank Valdez,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
and Tim Talon.
Yes.
All right, and the last vote for this evening is whether the UDC has determined the building meets the design guidelines. Included in that vote, if the commission would like to call out any design guidelines in particular, that can also be included. If no specific design guidelines are called out, the motion would be to move that the building has met the design guidelines for the MR3 district.
Motion that the building has met the design guidelines.
So moved. Do I hear a second?
Second,
All right, seconded by Deborah Fennick. Roll call vote, Frank Valdez,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
yes.
and Tim Talon.
Yes.
All right. That concludes the design review for 181 Pearl Street. Thank you very much, Mr. Picker and your team.
Great. Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. We
Good
really
question.
appreciate the feedback as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Good night.
And with that, that is the last item on our agenda. So all we need is a motion to close the meeting.
Sure. So just before we, like, is it possible for staff, maybe at our next meeting, to clarify the applicability of the green roof ordinance? It's something we've been reviewing on other projects with the expectation that it needs to be provided.
Of the green roofs ordinance?
So section 10.3.8 of the zoning code requires that for all buildings in mixed-use districts and other districts, 80% of the roof be vegetated.
We can follow up on whether that's something that the UDC should be reviewing, just to make sure.
Well, I guess that wasn't my question. I think it is.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
I think this applicant noted that they wouldn't be required to comply with that because the roof is unoccupied. I would like clarification on whether that is consistent with the ordinance as written.
So we can provide that clarification, but I do want to note that ISD zoning review planners are very thorough in reviewing those requirements. So if it's applicable, then it will be noted. But we will get you an answer.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting.
Second.
All right, all in favor, Frank,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Thank you.